Boundaries are a silent or verbal communication and manifestation of how we feel around people, how we want to be treated, how their actions make us feel. And for a lot of us, these are inherited, these are ignored, these are unknown. We don't know how we come across, we don't know why people walk all over us. And there is evidence that if you're clear with your boundaries, that if you communicate them effectively and persistently, you will actually get people to respect them, however high the level of pushback. And that our own footprint and ability to recognize and respect the boundaries and values of others around us will make the world a little friendlier, a little happier, and actually reduce the overwhelm and confusion that other people pushing our own boundaries can often create for us. Now, with that in mind, boundaries then are about you, your feelings, your worth, your expectations from those that you invite into your life or who happen upon you mistakenly. You are setting that clear message that your actions make me uncomfortable. And as much as I do not want to dictate your behavior, I want to feel safe and comfortable within my space. So, for that reason, I'm going to be able to clarify to you that coming into my space and behaving the way you have behaved makes me sad, makes me uncomfortable and unsafe. And for that reason, it becomes up to you to change, to compromise with me, or up to me to push you out of my circle to protect my sanity, my safety, and my joy. Now, when your boundaries are permissive, it's indicative of your own sense of self. Because when we let people walk all over us, when we say yes endlessly, it almost feels as if we struggle with our own self image. We struggle with our own self acceptance. And therefore, we struggle to differentiate when you have that conversation with somebody and agree and disagree and walk away, knowing that I will not tolerate this aspect of them, but I absolutely love that aspect of them. I spoke a while ago about confluencing, where you meet people and you share certain values and you confluence and you love some of them and hate some of them, and you share some of you and keep some of you, and you keep that healthy balance of confluence, or you differentiate and you go your own way, knowing that you engaged well with them. The alternative is to get into contact with them and go straight into isolation, because you're struggling to communicate and they're struggling to understand you. And therefore, those clashes are seeming as if they're walking all over you, but it's because you're miscommunicating those values. You're confusing them. My name is Aso, and I welcome you warmly to this Clear Minds and Self Healing Corner. I appreciate my returning subscribers, and I implore you, if you're watching for the first time, to subscribe and join me here. I share content every Saturday morning around every aspect that can impact on us socially, emotionally, and to enable us to heal and to empower ourselves so that we can heal and empower those who are significant in our lives. Now, there are three main categories of boundaries that I want to discuss with you today. The first one is weak boundaries. The second one is rigid boundaries. And the third one is healthy boundaries. But before I go into that, I want to be really clear that sometimes boundaries shift according to your mood. They shift when you're stressed. They shift when you find yourself in certain circumstances that you let sleeping dogs lie and you're not in the mood or the mental space to challenge people who push your boundaries. I also want to be clear that boundaries can be physical when people come into your space, proximity. Some people are touchy feeling, some people want space, and other people like closeness from specific people like your kids, your lovers, your friends, your siblings, separately and differently, and depending on what time and what emotion you find yourself in. And therefore, in those instances, you may have a time when you want to be hugged, you want to be held, and have a time when you want people to back off and give you breathing space. And being able to communicate those changes and shifts to people who otherwise thought that you like to be held or like to be left alone is really significant, because nobody is a mind reader. When you change your boundaries in those instances, it's really, really important that you communicate that they have changed, that you need a hug, that you need space, or that you're hurting now, so that there is clarity for those that are around you. And they are then in that space where they either choose to respect you or fail to respect you, and you're then forced to sustain and enforce your boundaries around them. If we see you as a well that has protective walls around it and clean, pure water in the center of you, your walls present the boundaries that you put up around you. Your water is clean inside of you, and you hold out the twigs and the insects and the soil and everything else with your boundary walls. And if you have weak boundaries, the soil will seep in, the insects will crawl in, and everything else that you build your walls to hold out will be able to find its way into your well. And therefore, instead of dwelling with your clean water, you're going to spend time sifting and throwing out the insects and dwelling in all the emotional and physical and psychological impact of people dumping on you. I need a babysitter this Saturday. No, I'm actually exhausted. I want to rest. And then this loving person turns up to your door with the baby on Saturday. What are you going to do? Open the door and let them in? That boundary has been intentionally breached, and it's now on you to respond, to ignore it, to drop it, to dump it. And that's what I mean by weak boundaries. You've set those boundaries, you've communicated them clearly, they've been broken. Now what? Because that's the thing with boundaries. You do not aim to dictate to people how they should behave. You aim to communicate to them how you want to be treated, how you're feeling now, how you're feeling today. And by you letting them breach yours, you're letting them dump on you. And therefore, you're dealing and dealing and dealing with what is coming through the walls of your world. And by lowering and lowering and lowering those values and boundaries, you're persistently having to take in, throw out, or have those conversations around why you didn't let in. And this can be exhausting. This can create disrespect, internal self doubt as to why people disrespect you. Why don't they listen to me? Why did they do the thing that is contrary to what I demanded? Because when they turned up last Saturday, you opened the door. So the following Saturday, when they have a crisis or a date, they're going to turn up again. Amongst all the 100 friends that they have, they know that you're the one who will lower your boundaries and take them in. This is a tricky one because we are humans. We don't want to then become inhuman and rude and disrespectful and dismissive. But at the same time, if you find that the same people are pushing your boundaries over and over again, it then becomes your fault. The thing with weak boundaries is that you can start to internalize by doing the things that people are dumping on you and moaning in the background, or externalize by having that persistent yelling and conflicting discussion with them, like, why did you do that? Why do you disrespect me? Why does nobody listen to me? You are the author of your boundaries. You are the author of your feelings and your emotions, and only you can look them in the eye and say, listen, I told you I was struggling. I told you I haven't slept for 5 days. I wanted this Saturday to sleep. That is how clearly you have to communicate your boundaries and sometimes deal with those pushbacks to be able to protect you. The other thing then is those rigid boundaries, which I've just mentioned. Like I said, people with rigid boundaries are people with that attitude of it's my way or the highway. And that is also not what I'm encouraging, because you have to be tolerant, you have to be empathetic and listen to your friends and understand that we have to be there for each other. We have to support each other. And sometimes you do need that crisis knock on your door on that Saturday morning and be understanding in that instant. What I'm talking about in terms of maintaining your boundaries is that persistent person who pushes your boundaries. And if I give you another example, if I come into your car and it looks dirty and smelly, I'm more likely to drop dirt in that car than a squeaky clean car. So sometimes we are all over our own boundaries and it confuses people and encourages boundary pushers to push all over us. So you have to be living by example of those boundaries that you're quoting to people. You have to be strict to those routines. You don't drink, you don't drink. You're on a diet, you're on a diet. Otherwise, friends will encourage you to eat that thing that you've told them you don't want to eat because they saw you eating it that many times. So, too rigid boundaries communicate lack of vulnerability. Your walls are so high up, and those represent your own insecurities. They potentially represent your own past experiences around those things, around distrust, around people being so up and down with you that you are struggling with compromise. So you're firm, like, I'm not coming and I'm not coming. And as right as you are, as human beings, we need that level of flexibility and compromise to be able to have a healthy social relationship. And finally, then, we can have healthy boundaries. And your healthy boundaries are that ability to state clearly that this is who I am, this is where I'm standing, this is what I want in the middle of my world, this is why I struggled so badly to build the walls around that well. And then stand by those routines and by those definitions. You can choose to lower your boundaries according to circumstance or according to emotion and how you're feeling in that instance. It's your choice. As long as you're then clear to those around you that for this once, I'm going to do this for you. Because the thing is, the people on the other side of your boundaries are either going to be confused or intentionally pushing. So when you're clear on your boundaries, it sets that clear message. And when they push, you can choose to allow this once with that clarity and say, just this once, I'm going to let you through my door on this Saturday and miss my rest. But don't you come back next Saturday because you know it's my rest day. You have to then learn how to say that no. Because the thing that pushes people all over their boundaries is our desire to be loved. It's our struggle with the word no. That is the contradiction of that boundary pushing. We say yes persistently because we feel loved with yes. We feel popular with yes. And therefore, we struggle with our boundaries because yes is the easier thing to do. And if that's the case for you, here are a few easier ways to say no that are not so difficult or projecting of the love that you seek from friends. I'm struggling today. That says no, but it also says that you're struggling, and a loving friend will understand that. But it also says that it's not always going to be a no on this topic. So I may compromise another day, but not today. So not today or not now. It doesn't mean not ever. You can also say no with a suggestion. This is risky. You're better than this. This sounds dodgy. Why are you asking me to do this illegal thing? Why don't you try another thing? So you haven't just said no, you've cautioned a friend, you've given the explanation as to why you said no to that thing, and you've given suggestions for a more positive approach to that thing. And finally, you can find another way to say no by clarifying and signposting them to somewhere else where you think they can seek better help with that issue. This is the second time I've seen you break like this. I think you need more professional help. I'm not in an emotional space to handle this with you. And quite frankly, I think you need to nip this in the bud, and I'm gonna try and take you to so and so on so and such a day. And therefore, you haven't dismissed that friend that came knocking with that big issue. You've protected yourself because you're not able to deal with it now. You don't want to inherit that emotion or that crime or that issue, but you have supported them and offered a better alternative that hasn't just sent them crashing and burning, but tells them that you're there and you're there as the right kind of friend and the right kind of support. Please share this message to motivate and empower others as we do on this channel. And I want to thank you for joining me here today. And I look forward to having another session with you next week.